the orders, excuse me, given to it by humans, except for such orders that conflict with the first law, and law number 3, a robot must protect its own existence, except for such protection would interfere with the first or second laws. So if robots could follow these laws, robots could do these things, robots would be, they wouldn't take over the world. They'd be warm, they'd be fluffy and fuzzy, they'd be very friendly, useful things. The problem is that robots can't read. Robots have no idea what these laws mean. Yeah, I recognize Watson just won Jeopardy, but that was a very limited, very different set of problems. So let's talk briefly about some of the engineering to get real robots in real environments. And let's switch to, before we talk about robots, let's talk about some of the most amazingly built engineering systems we have on the planet. Cockroaches, which I live in Houston now. I am intimately familiar with cockroaches. They get awfully big down south, and they fly too. But fantastic engineering. So in particular, we're going to focus on this end of the animal. And on this side, we have these two things sticking out here called cerci. And they're covered with hundreds of little hairs. Those hairs are designed to detect changes in the air pressure around them. So if you're a frog and the tongue is coming towards you, rather if you're a roach and a frog's tongue is coming towards you, you can detect the shock wave of that incoming threat before it gets to you. And then in one of the fastest escape responses in nature, rotate and start moving away from you. In fact, they turn so fast, start moving, they're actually starting to move before their brains have even really registered that they're moving. So really, really fast. So how does that work? Well, what ties all that together? Well, you've got 3 different things. You have huge sensing, whereas engineering systems and robots have very limited sensors. My robots have, I don't know, maybe 20 sensors. Maybe a very, very sophisticated robot will have maybe several hundred sensors. These roaches have several hundred sensors just on their tail end. The computation that we know how to do right now. Most computers have a single processor, and they do things in order. Yeah, you've got some dual cores, quad, and 8 cores, but this roach has millions of neurons all together working at the same time. So that kind of redundancy, that kind of parallel computation, is something that we just don't have a good understanding of. We don't know how to take information and split it up and compute all of it simultaneously and then do something with that. Finally, the roach is in this amazing body that lets it scramble over obstacles, lets it heal itself, eat, reproduce, do any number of things the roach needs to do. The bodies that we can build for our, and the roach is engineered at the molecular level. We are just now beginning to get to that level of engineering. And we have hundreds and hundreds of years before we can figure out how to do that well. At least, so says this scientist. So, you put it all together with the cockroach, it starts moving from 8 to 70 milliseconds after the puff of air gets in. That's a really fantastically fast response. Let's take a look at. So the sound you're hearing is the gasoline engine that drives the electronics and drives the compressor for the air system. And that is the state-of-the-art in legged locomotion in robots. So how often do you see someone actually drop kick their robot? This is the big dog robot from Boston Dynamics. And the goal is to have a robot that is able to carry equipment for soldiers in rough terrain. In order to do that, you have to have legs. If you've got legs, you have to be able to deal with somebody messing with you or the environment giving you a bad day. So you have to be able to recover from obstacles and tripping and things in the environment. And this robot recovers from that kind of upset very quickly. But let's look at another system recovering and see how quickly it can recover. Here's our favorite natural system. This time it has a cannon strapped to its back. And when the cannon fires, the recoil from that BB will send the roach sideways a little bit. But if you look carefully, the BB hasn't even finished bouncing yet, and the roach has pretty much already got itself straightened out. It's pointing pretty much the right direction. Now, when the biologists went to analyze this, they realized that the roach is straightening out faster than the neurological reflex arc would let it do that. Essentially, it was straightening out before it could think about straightening out. And they did not understand how this was happening. So they did a very careful analysis of the mechanical elements of the roach skeleton. They looked at the legs and how the legs are positioned, the forces and torques on the legs, the springs and the dampers that are in the muscles and the skeleton. And they realized that the roach is naturally stable. The way it's physically designed, the same way you take your bicycle and let go of the handlebars, that same kind of physics lets the roach when you poke at it, it straightens out automatically without having to think. So they call this preflexes, because these are reflexes that happen before reflexes, so they're preflexes. And imagine, though, how much simpler you can make your robot software if the body already knows how to walk straight without having to think about it. So that kind of pushing the intelligence down into the body is very inspiring. Nature is very inspiring, and that's something that you have to think about when you're building robotic systems. So when you put it all together, there are also, when you get to talking about intelligence, there are also some deep philosophical issues to deal with if you want to build robotics. The first one is, what is intelligence? So the famous example is the Turing test. This test goes like so. If you imagine you have a friend of yours in Miami, and you are sending them text messages about how things are, you're having a nice conversation, and this has been going on for years. They say they're having a great time, they went to Disney World, they had a lot of fun, a hurricane came through, it was a bummer. And you've been talking with this person for a very long time. If you find out after 3 years of this conversation that this person is actually an iPad hooked up to the internet, is that iPad intelligent? If the iPad could fool you into thinking it was intelligent, is it intelligent? You can say, well, that's a philosophical question. And the deep core of that is, what is intelligence? Is intelligence something that we have, or is intelligence something that when we look at something, we attribute intelligence to it? If you're watching Jeopardy, Watson got some questions wrong. Got some questions wrong in bad ways. And the way that it was doing it, where it had a gigantic database searching for things, is not the way we do intelligence. But it was fool us, even though it was doing these problems in a very different way than the way we solve these things. Is that computer intelligent? And we don't know what the answer to the question is. This is a philosophical question. We think the answer is yes. If something appears and looks and acts and quacks like an intelligent thing, then we'll call it intelligent. The other issue to deal with is, where does this intelligence come from? So if we look at all the examples that we have of intelligent systems, humans and animals and things that are naturally occurring, they're all built out of atoms, which form molecules, which form cells, which form people. So all these things, at the lowest level, atoms, they're not intelligent. You put them together into molecules, which are very complicated mechanically, electrically, and chemically, but not intelligent either. Cells, again, more sophistication, but still, you could argue they're not intelligent either. But somehow the interactions of all these things give you the intelligence that you're looking for. So even though we know that we can get intelligence from unintelligent parts, we don't know how to do that. And these are really hard philosophical problems. So thankfully, we don't need to solve these to build useful robots. Here's a useful robot. Who's got one, by the way? 1, 2, 3. All right, so some of you have some. So in the back, how does this robot work? How does it clean? Good.
When you switch it on and leave it in a big room, it goes off in one direction, and then it senses that there is a wall or something, then it turns around and keeps picking up the dust. So every time it senses that, it turns itself around and cleans up that way.
So essentially it bounces randomly. When you come back from the robot, when the robot's cleaned, it doesn't have those nice straight lines, all the carbon fibers are lined up. The breakthrough in this design was the realization that as a user, you don't care if the robot vacuums your floor, vacuums each area exactly once. You care that the robot vacuums each area of your floor at least once. So if it vacuums some area 5, 10, 15 times, yeah, you're unconcerned, as long as you're not there to actually push it around to do that. So when you realize that, gosh, all we need to do is do randomized coverage. We don't need to do a nice uniform, what's called Musso-Fredonic path of the plow pattern. All of a sudden, your intelligent design gets a lot simpler. So they can make the robot pretty stupid, put it in a very complicated, very cleverly designed mechanical design with clever software to estimate the size of the room, how cluttered the room is, et cetera, and then you end up selling 3 million of these things. So they're very, very good design, very clever. But the key of it is to simplify the problem. Here's another robot. That's the robot right there in the middle. And the goal for this robot is to help people, to be assistive to elderly or handicapped people who need help. And the realization was that if robots are going to be useful in a human-sized and human-shaped world, they're going to need to have some of the features that humans have. It's going to need to be able to walk upstairs. It's going to need to be able to go outside, pick up a newspaper, take it out of a plastic bag, open it up to the science section, reach up to the cupboard and get a cup out. So you're going to need to have hands, you're going to need to have legs, you're going to need to be about 4 feet tall. That's where asthma comes from. So you could argue the most sophisticated robot in the world at the time is pretty clear. Even still, very, very sophisticated piece of hardware. And I was sitting there next to this thing. I really wanted to poke it. You could hear all the motors whirring and keeping it balanced, and I was pretty sure that if I gave it a good shove, it would just take a nice little step. But I was being stared at by about 30 angry Honda engineers, and I didn't think I could outrun all of them. Anyway, here's another robot. This one also by iRobot. If you're these warfighters and you have to explore this cave, you can either go in yourself or you can send the robot in. What would you prefer to do? Exactly. So this one here is all set up for explosive ordnance disposal. iRobot sends them out like this. Sometimes they come back like this. Regardless of your views of our foreign policy or conflicts, what we're doing overseas, this is much better than the alternative. This robot did its job. The postcard says, our robot, for all your support, we're going to save lives today. And this came from Iraq. So, good stuff. My favorite application is sending robots to Mars. And Mars is perhaps the best example of the 3 Ds of robotics. A mission that is dangerous, dirty, and dull. So Mars is dangerous, it's very cold, it's far from home, lots of radiation. It's dirty, you can see all that dirt right here in the picture. And even though it is exciting to go to Mars, running up to rocks for 5 years in a row and putting a little rock paper on them, after a while, that's got to get a little old. So a little dull. And robots are great for things like that. We'll come back to these. Okay, so that's science fiction versus science reality. Here's what I do. I work on multi-robot systems. So if somebody gets walked over to you and gave you 10,000 robots, how would you get them to work together and get something done? So why, first of all, would you want so many robots? Well, let's say you're, here's a lab, here's my picture. I think there's 68 in this picture, I've got 112 total. Yeah, that's a lot of robots. So let's say you're a firefighter and you were in the forest fire. Wouldn't it be great to have robots to look around you and find where the hot spots are, to make sure everything is out so that you don't get caught between 2 things or you don't relight things? Or small robots that can go around and just put out sparks. So that once you have the area cleared, the humans do the hard work, and then leave the robots to put out the small fires for the easy work. Fantastic thing for robots to do. Earthquakes. But here's a job that humans are uniquely ill-suited to do. We're either too big to get inside the rubble, or we're too weak to lift the rubble off of a survivor if we find it. So imagine a whole ecosystem of robots. Maybe you have 10,000 cockroach robots who go through and look for signs of life. So they have a little cockroach radio network. They relay their findings out to a bunch of rat-sized structural engineer robots. And these guys are the brains of the operation. They know the blueprint of the building. They go through the rubble. They find the survivor. They analyze the stuff on top of them, and they compute an effective rescue plan. They then send their instructions to a bunch of brontosaurus-sized. But wait, we killed the brontosaurus, didn't we? Apatosaurus-sized, Optimus Prime-sized robots. Who would then pick the rubble off piece by piece and solve the reverse Jenga puzzle of getting the rubble off to get the person out. So here's a job that robots can do that humans just cannot do right now. But my favorite job is sending robots to Mars. And right now we have 2 robots on Mars. What if we had 2,000? What might that look like? And that brings us to our robot demo. Camera guy, I've got the robots on this side. Are you portable or am I portable? Yeah. So for this demonstration, I've got my handy dandy remote control. The people in the cheap seats, the robots are over here. They're only 5 inches tall. You may want to come a little closer. So I'm going to be driving the robots over here. So I'll give you guys a second to shift around a little bit. So if you can't see them on the stage, I can't obviously drive them down here. I don't want to put them down in the pit because no one will be able to see them. So move around a little bit so you can get a view. Okay, so let's say we just landed on Mars, and we want to get the robots